Revealed, the touching moment a cleaner whispered to a millionaire, resulting in an incredible turnaround. Maria's life felt like an unrelenting whirlwind. At 35, juggling multiple jobs across the chic skyscrapers of New York City was the only way she knew to keep her family afloat after her husband's illness left her as the sole breadwinner. Each morning, she scrubbed and polished the polished marble floors of a high-rise office building, while tirelessly managing the clockwork of her children's needs at home. With her heart filled with determination, she pushed through exhaustion, her spirit undeterred. But there was a weight in her chest, every scrape against the floor igniting the internal conflict of desperation and hope. One fateful morning, while maneuvering around the elegant lobby, Maria collided with Ethan, a tech mogul consumed by the demands of his career. Just a quick glance into his eyes revealed turmoil lurking beneath his composed facade. In that brief encounter, her nurturing instinct surged to the surface, urging her to reach out. "Remember what truly matters," she whispered, her voice a melting comfort in the cold, corporate climate around them. As she darted away, she stole a look back, sensing that her words had carved a fragile opening into his detachment. In the following weeks, their interactions became a quiet cadence in the rhythm of her endless days. Each time she saw him, her heart fluttered with an odd mixture of fear and hope. He didn't belong to her world, yet Ethan took her words to heart. The superficial layers of wealth began to dissolve in their conversations, forcing him to confront the hollow success he often wore like armor. Yet, looming shadows threatened to overshadow their unlikely friendship as Ethan's company faced accusations of unethical practices. Whispers of scandals slinked through the sleek hallways, threatening both of their worlds. The weight of Maria's responsibilities crashed into her like a tidal wave of anxiety. Each night, she prayed for her husband to recover, prayed for her children's laughter to drown out the worry that clung to her like a second skin. She grappled with an insidious fear: what if helping Ethan would cost her everything? Her friends, hard-working people who made their livelihoods in the very building she cleaned, faced uncertainty. Would she sacrifice her chance at a better life for a fight that seemed insurmountable? Yet, she felt emboldened by their shared mission. In hushed tones behind the polished surfaces, they strategized the path forward, the breath of the city invigorating their fight against injustice. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each new day dawning, the stakes escalated. Maria felt the tension tightening as the scandal grew. Ethan was torn between revealing the truth or preserving the legacy he had built. It weighed upon him, creating rifts in his psyche that mirrored her own struggle. Just when she thought his resolve had solidified, a former ally, embittered by Ethan's transformation, threatened to expose everything. Panic crept in as the clock ticked down to an inevitable confrontation, forcing her to confront her own fears of loss and isolation. Within the heightening chaos, Maria's breath quickened, her pulse racing like the bustling streets outside. In that moment of vulnerability, she leaned closer to him, her whispered plea stronger: "Remember why we fight." The words hung between them, heavy with the burden of their choices yet illuminated by the flicker of possibility. Would they stand against the tides of greed, or would their hopes extinguish under the weight of external pressures? The question loomed, leaving them both teetering on a brink, and the city pulsing around them promised both danger and deliverance. The world around Maria felt fractured, suspended between the compounding pressures and glimmers of hope. Each encounter with Ethan pushed her deeper into a realm of introspection she had never traversed. As she climbed the staircase to the rooftop garden of the office building, her heart pounded not only from exertion but from the impending confrontation she sensed would loom over their next meeting. As the door swung open to the flowering urban oasis, she inhaled sharply, a breath infused with the fragrances of blooming flowers battling the stench of uncertainty. She felt both exhilarated and terrified. This space had become the sanctuary where her conversations with Ethan flourished, away from prying eyes. Today, however, it felt like a pressure cooker, ready to explode with raw emotions. Ethan was already waiting for her, his back turned as he leaned against the railing, staring at the distant horizon dotted with the silhouettes of skyscrapers. The tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Too many unsaid words lingered between them. Maria stepped forward, her mind racing with possibilities. She had to decide quickly: would she shield her own fragile existence or risk everything to pull Ethan from the brink of self-destruction? "Ethan," she began, her voice steady but soft, "we need to talk." She could feel the weight of her own words pressing down on her, entangled with a mixture of concern and determination. That he turned slowly, and she saw the conflict etched on his brow. "I don't know how to tread this line anymore, Maria. Do I protect what I've built or expose the rot beneath?" His tone was edged with anguish, echoing her own fears. "Listen to me," she urged, stepping closer, "it isn't just about you. Your choice will shape the lives of countless people who depend on you. And our friendship, it means something. It's not just words exchanged between a cleaner and a millionaire." The intensity in her gaze caught him off guard. In that moment, she felt a surge of realization. Maria understood that she was not merely a vessel of encouragement or a mere spectator in this unfolding drama. She was an integral player in a story that needed her voice and resolve. Ethan's expression softened, but then darkened with the weight of the impending decision. "What if I lose everything? What if exposing the truth means dragging you and your family into the spotlight of this scandal?" He paced restlessly, words spilling out in a cascade of fear and self-doubt. "No one can take away the strength you find in doing what's right," Maria countered, her confidence blossoming as she spoke. "We can't always play it safe. There's more to life than wealth. It's about integrity. If you don't reclaim your narrative, someone else will write it for you. Your story deserves to be told truthfully, and you deserve peace." She was astonished at her own strength, her voice rising above the chaos of his doubts. In that moment, clarity pierced through her earlier fears like a ray of sunlight breaking through storm clouds. It dawned on her, perhaps this battle would not just affect Ethan, but would challenge her own capacity for bravery and leadership. Ethan paused, absorbing her words like a drowning man grasping for air. His eyes met hers with a renewed intensity that ignited dormant feelings of resolve within her. "Okay," he finally said, the tremor in his voice betraying his uncertainty. "Let us confront this together. But what if it backfires?" Her heart thudded. Her disbelief at their next steps didn't undermine her determination. "Then we deal with it," she replied, her conviction unwavering. "Together." As they stared into each other's eyes, an unspoken agreement solidified in that moment, but the weight of their choices threatened to crash over them anew. They could either falter at the precipice of uncertainty or leap into the fray. The moment felt monumental, yet the air crackled with unresolved tension, leaving the emergence of their plan lurking just beneath the surface. But was this newfound alliance strong enough to withstand the backlash that awaited? As they stood facing the city ahead, Maria's resolve solidified, but anxiety gnawed at her. Every decision bore immense stakes. In her gut, she felt a twist of foreboding. The stakes would only escalate from here. "Are you ready?" she whispered, a question not just to Ethan but for herself. The answer would shape their futures, anchoring them on a thread of uncertain outcomes and moral dilemmas that lay ahead, waiting to be unearthed, unraveling the fragile fabric of their intertwined lives. Maria's heart raced as she and Ethan stood together, facing the vast expanse of the city, each second stretching into an eternity, laden with unspoken fears. The air hummed with unfulfilled potential, and she tightened her grip on her thoughts, forcing herself to focus on the path ahead. It was no longer about saving Ethan alone, it was about self-discovery in the face of uncertainty. "Let us meet tomorrow morning, bright and early," Ethan suggested, breaking the spell that had entrapped them. Maria nodded, her mind racing with strategies. This wasn't merely about supporting him, it was a defining moment, demanding her to embrace her own strength. She felt an unexpected thrill of empowerment. As she descended the staircase back to her office, Maria considered what the next day would hold. Each step felt like a deliberate choice, her body moving with an unusual sense of purpose. She passed co-workers in the hallway who barely acknowledged her presence, but today she was different. Today, she was unearthing her own resolve, one choice at a time. On reaching her desk, Maria sat down, the hum of office life surrounding her. It was a far cry from the chaos of the rooftop. But within the mundane, she sought clarity. She opened her notebook and began jotting down ideas. This wasn't just about waiting for things to unfold, she had the power to shape this narrative. Her hand moved quickly over the pages, outlining strategies, potential risks, and the vital truths she believed should be revealed. What if, she thought, she gathered information discreetly? She could create a concise report that highlighted the injustices without exposing Ethan unnecessarily. Stepping into this role was liberating, a flicker of hidden capabilities sparked within her as she organized her thoughts meticulously. The more she wrote, the clearer her voice became. Every sentence reinforced her belief that integrity mattered more than any material comfort. She envisioned presenting the plan to Ethan, not from a position of subservience, but as an equal partner navigating uncharted waters. She was no longer just a cleaner, she was a key player in their joint confrontation against the shadows threatening to consume Ethan's life. By the time she left the office that evening, the city lights glittering back to life, Maria felt an unfamiliar confidence settle within her chest. She was finally engaging with her reality, no longer just a passive observer of her life, but an active architect of her fate. Yet, a faint whisper of doubt lingered in the recesses of her mind. Would Ethan accept her newfound authority? Would he see her as an ally or merely a complication? As she walked through the vibrant streets, she couldn't shake the thought, tomorrow could mark the beginning of profound change or a heartbreaking collapse. This uncertainty matched the frayed edges of her hope. There was no more turning back, they were at the precipice of something significant. Sitting at home that night, she reflected on the whirlwind day. Every fleeting moment had built into a steady drumbeat urging her forward. She prepared herself for the conversation that awaited, her mind oscillating between enthusiasm and trepidation. There was no denying that the outcome could alter the course of both their lives. In embracing her own narrative, could she risk her fragile stability for the uncertain promise of honesty and integrity? To stifle her uncertainty would require more than just bravery, it would demand a fierce confrontation with all she had ever known. In this crucible of decision, she felt the exhilarating pull of potential, a wild card waiting to be played. The sunlight breaking through her blinds the next morning acted as an unexpected herald, a reminder that every dawn presented a new opportunity. She stood poised before the day, fearless in her resolve. Just as she was about to step outside, her phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. "Can we talk now?" An electrifying sense of dread coupled with anticipation charged the air around her. This moment had arrived sooner than expected. The proverbial die had been cast, and as she rushed to meet Ethan, a new wave of her personal journey began to unfurl, beckoning her toward possibilities as daunting as they were transformative. Would she embrace the challenge ahead, or falter when it mattered most? The cafe hummed with the soft chatter of morning patrons, the rich aroma of coffee mingling with freshly baked pastries. Maria's heart raced as she stepped inside, scanning the familiar faces until her gaze landed on Ethan. He was seated at a corner table, his fingers nervously tapping against his mug. This was the moment she had anticipated, yet the gravity of it settled heavily in her chest. Approaching him with deliberate steps, she felt a mix of excitement and anxiety, emotions interwoven yet distinct. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, steadied her breath, and took a seat across from him. His slate-gray eyes met hers, a torrent of emotions swirling within. "Thanks for coming, Maria," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "Of course," she replied, the steadiness of her tone surprising even herself. It was time to confront the reality that loomed over both of them. "I've been thinking about everything you face, and I believe we can tackle it together." The weight of her words was tangible, solidifying her resolve. Ethan shifted in his seat, an unspoken question hanging in the air between them. "I don't want to drag you into my mess," he admitted, a tinge of guilt coloring his expression. Her heart thudded, a mixture of frustration and determination welling inside her. "This isn't just your mess. It's affecting my life too." I want to help. But I need you to trust me. Seeing the flicker of hesitation in his eyes, she pressed on. I've worked on a plan gathering information that highlights the issues without putting you at risk. We can present it as if it's just a casual observation, and you have the decision to make. Ethan's brow furrowed as he absorbed her words. It was a calculated risk. A part of Maria wished he would readily embrace her proposal, but she could sense his inner conflict. Maria, this could backfire. You could lose your job, and I don't want to be the reason for that, he cautioned, shifting uneasily in his seat. She leaned in slightly, her conviction palpable. But I won't lose myself again, Ethan. This is bigger than me. It's about standing for what's right. I've spent far too long in the background, allowing others to dictate my life. With you, I feel capable of making a change, of confronting the injustices that we see. His gaze softened, the layers of unease beginning to unravel. You really believe that? More than anything, she said firmly. We can be allies, not just in this fight but in navigating the consequences together. Let us face this as partners. The silence that followed was thick with possibility, anticipation dancing between them. In that moment, Maria felt a surge of strength as confidence coursed through her. For once, she was standing firm in her beliefs, ready to embrace the potential of what lay ahead, whether it meant triumph or failure. All right, Ethan finally said, his tone shifting, acceptance visible in his demeanor. Let us do this. Show me what you've got. Maria's heart soared, a combination of exhilaration and fear enveloping her. This marked a turning point in her journey, stepping into not just the role of a supporter but as a key ally in confronting the shadows looming over them. As they reviewed her notes, a palpable sense of unity began to take shape. Threaded through every line were not just strategies, but hope and resolve, an embodiment of her commitment to neither stand on the sidelines nor shrink back in fear. But as the discussion about their plan deepened, a new worry tugged at her consciousness. What if their efforts drew attention from those with more nefarious motives? Just as the thought settled in, Ethan's phone buzzed on the table, flashing a message that knocked the breath out of Maria. We need to talk. Now. She felt a shiver run down her spine, the realization dawning that this journey was about to take a perilous turn. Would they be ready for it? They exchanged worried glances, and as the tension escalated, the question loomed, were they prepared to face whatever storm was brewing on the horizon? Ethan stared down at his phone, a mixture of concern and confusion washing over his face. It was evident in the way his brows knitted together, as though he was grasping for clarity in the face of rising uncertainty. Without even thinking, he reached for his phone, swiping to reveal the message again. Maria felt her own breath hitch at the intensity of the moment. They had crossed a threshold, and the gravity of their situation was becoming undeniably real. Who is it? She asked, trying to maintain a composed demeanor despite the surge of anxiety welling inside her. It's from my supervisor, he replied, his voice low as if speaking too loudly might bring unwanted scrutiny. I didn't expect to hear from him, especially not like this. Maria leaned in, her instinct telling her to support him even as the undercurrent of concern threatened to pull them in different directions. What do you think he wants? I don't know, Ethan admitted, glancing back at the buzzing device as if it held answers to questions he hadn't yet articulated. But it can't be good. I don't want to put you in any more danger than you might already be in. The moment felt fragile, the warmth of understanding between them now tinged with impending dread. Yet, in the pit of her stomach, Maria felt a stubborn determination to stay present. We're in this together, remember? Let us figure it out. With a nod, Ethan put the phone down on the table. He leaned back slightly, allowing an internal struggle to play out across his features. If I'm going to accept your plan, we need to know what risks we're facing, he said, his voice gradually gaining strength. I can't keep you safe if we don't first determine what the danger really is. Maria's mind raced, reflecting on how their earlier conversation had evolved so quickly into this moment of truth. Each decision they made seemed to echo louder, their outcome spiraling into uncharted territory. What if your supervisor is suspicious? Maria posed, her mind thousands of scenarios ahead. We need to strategize how to respond or evade whatever they might throw at you. Information is our best weapon, and I can help gather it. Ethan's eyes sparkled with a mix of fear and admiration for her unwavering commitment. You're willing to dig deeper, aren't you? Absolutely, she affirmed. But it will require more than just research. We'll need to devise a communication plan, ways to relay information without raising alarms. This isn't just about you anymore, it's about protecting us both. With each word, Maria felt her professional instincts sharpening. The metaphorical gears in her mind clicked into place, revealing how vulnerable they really were. She was no longer a spectator in someone else's drama, she was part of a duo determined to challenge the status quo. All right, Ethan replied, taking a deep breath as he steadied himself. Let us break down the next steps, focusing on gathering intel about the department. We can start by reaching out to a couple of, trusted colleagues. Smart, Maria said, impressed by his quickening resolve. Our initial focus should be gathering intel about what has been going on behind the scenes. Then we can assess the risks connected to your supervisor's message. We might need to think of alternative channels to explore. As they began brainstorming potential contacts and avenues for information, a sense of exhilaration began to take root within Maria. Each idea exchanged sparked not just anticipation but also a palpable bond between them. She found newfound purpose in devising tactics, every concept reinforcing her belief in the power they wielded by taking a stand together, yet as excitement mounted, a nagging concern shadowed her thoughts. The very tide of their plan might unleash forces beyond their control. Just then, Ethan's phone buzzed again, pulling her back into the moment. With an apprehensive glance, he picked it up, his expression shifting into one of worry. Maria, he began, his voice faltering. It's my supervisor again. He wants me to meet him right now. He says it's urgent. The urgency of the situation crashed over them both, igniting a new wave of uncertainty. Maria gripped her hands tightly on the table as she searched for words. How could they react when the stakes were climbing higher than ever? Ethan, whatever he wants, stand your ground, she urged, her heart hammering in her chest. But what if he's onto us? He questioned, eyes darting around the cafe as if save him from an invisible threat. Then we make sure he knows we're not backing down, she replied, a fire lit in her determination. With that, the decision loomed: would Ethan confront this fear or let it dictate their next moves? Would he flee the challenge, or step resolutely into the storm? As he prepared to leave, Maria's mind raced, knowing this moment held more than fate for them both, it could diminish the very courage they were nurturing. Ethan stood, his decision brewing like thick espresso. The clock was ticking, and the uncertainty of their future hung heavily in the air. Would he defy the very forces trying to enforce silence, or become another part of the system they wanted to dismantle? Inescapable answers awaited them. As Ethan stepped out of the cafe, the world outside seemed oddly muted, as if the noise around him had been dialed down in anticipation of the imminent confrontation with his supervisor. The brisk air was sharp, invigorating yet laden with infinite possibilities. Each stride felt like a delicate balance between courage and apprehension, but he knew that the choice lay squarely in his hands. He recalled Maria's words, the insistence that standing his ground was not merely an act of defiance but a statement of shared purpose. The gravity of their situation anchored him, their mutual commitment casting a spotlight on everything he had ever strived to achieve in his career. It was no longer about survival, it was about integrity. With each step toward the office, his resolve crystallized. He wouldn't merely be responding to his supervisor, he would be asserting himself in a space where he often felt smaller. A place where ideas were stifled and ambitions muzzled by conformity. He could feel the rising pressure in his chest transforming into a clarion call for change within him. In the elevator, he faced a mirror, a reflection of tension and determination. The faint image of doubt flickered momentarily, but he quelled it with decisive intention. The echo of Maria's unwavering support reverberated in his mind, reminding him that he was not alone. It was an empowering feeling to know that nurturing relationships and being vulnerable could strengthen one's spirit. When he arrived at his supervisor's office, the door was ajar. He paused for a moment, centering himself, grounding his thoughts before stepping inside. The executive office, with its polished wooden desk and imposing decor, was a stark reminder of the hierarchical space he operated in. His supervisor, Mark, looked up from a pile of folders. The initial warm smile faded quickly as if it had never existed. "Ethan, come in," he said with a tone that lacked any hint of hospitality. "Thanks for seeing me," Ethan replied, taking a moment to gather his thoughts and assert a calm demeanor as he settled into the visitor's chair. "I received reports about some discrepancies in your recent project assessments," Mark began, folding his hands in a disapproving manner. "I want you to clarify some of your findings." Unease slipped in through the cracks, but Ethan steadied himself and began to explain, unearthing points of contention within the department's operations that he had previously brushed aside. There was a flicker in Mark's eyes that told Ethan he was onto something, but would his supervisor back down or push him further into a defensive corner? "Ethan," Mark interrupted, his voice laced with veiled authority, "this is highly irregular. You need to understand the structure here. Unfounded claims can jeopardize your position." The implication settled abruptly in the air. Here lay the very same threat they had anticipated. He was being warned into silence, steeped in caution as if questioning the system might lead him to the precipice of ruin. In that moment, Ethan felt the growing weight of his own fears and the memory of Maria's resolve igniting beneath the surface. He had a choice: retreat into compliance or thrust forward into the light of truth. He straightened in his chair and locked eyes with Mark. "I understand the risks, but these discrepancies could be affecting the entire department's integrity. It's vital we discuss the implications openly." Each word carried a weight he never allowed himself to express, an awakening of his professional voice he had long suppressed. Mark's response was quick, almost instinctual, yet a hint of uncertainty flickered over his features. Ethan's heart raced, feeling the electric charge of impending confrontation. Could he swing the momentum in his favor? The atmosphere thickened. Each moment stretched as Ethan prepared for a battle of wills, one that could define his path moving forward. Would he emerge emboldened and unscathed, or would this confrontation mark the beginning of a battle against a system deeply entrenched in silence? The conflict was not only external, it reverberated deep within him, daring him to forge ahead against the currents that sought to drag him down. He drew a steadying breath, readying himself for the outcome. The moment was finally here for him to stake his claim not just for himself, but for all who had been silenced before him. Would it be the moment of liberation he desperately sought, or would it herald a reckoning that approached too closely for comfort? He braced himself for Mark's inevitable response, the next words carrying the potential to redefine the course of his career, and their shared future. Would he break the cycle, or would this be an execution of compliance? The tension hung thick, and the unknowing gripped him tighter than any chain ever could. Mark leaned back in his chair, fingers drummed impatiently against the wooden desk, shifting the weight of authority toward Ethan. "You seem to think your observations are more significant than the years of protocol we have in place. There is a reason for every rule, Ethan. Have you considered that?" Ethan fought against the rush of frustration flooding his system. Protocols were meant to serve the greater good, but instead, they acted as a shackle for those who dared to question. He refused to let Mark's dismissive tone redirect him. "I understand the purpose of established protocols," he replied evenly, grounding his voice in conviction. "But if those rules allow inefficiencies, then aren't we failing our mission? The integrity of our department demands transparency, and it's crucial for our long-term success." Feeling emboldened by his own words, Ethan found a center of gravity amidst the storm brewing between them. Mark smirked, a flash of condescension as though Ethan presented naivety rather than insight. "What you perceive as inefficiencies may well be necessary adjustments that protect this company," Mark retorted, narrowing his gaze. "You don't yet understand the nature of business dynamics." "Maybe not," Ethan responded, his heartbeat steadying. "But I do understand the nature of accountability. If we ignore data that contradicts our narrative, we're inviting failure." A palpable silence followed. Mark's frown deepened, and the air crackled with unspoken tension. It dawned on Ethan that he was not merely challenging Mark's authority, but the very foundation of a culture that suppressed dissent. "Let us not forget who's in charge here," Mark finally said, irritation creeping into his tone. "Your career could very well depend on your ability to conform." Ethan's resolve stiffened, the defiance of conforming now reformulating into a strategic pivot. The stakes felt heightened, the impending reconsideration of his role openly laid on the table. He had fought too hard for his own beliefs to be resigned now. But what about the careers of those who come after me? By avoiding these discussions, we perpetuate a cycle of silence. Mark's face darkened, the threat of anger bubbling beneath his composed exterior. "Are you aiming for martyrdom, Ethan? The system has survived far too long for someone like you to dismantle it from within." It was a deliberate provocation, the mask of professionalism slipping, revealing the threat behind Mark's words. A wave of indignation washed over Ethan. He no longer felt fear of repercussions, clarity cracked through the chaos. "This isn't martyrdom, it's a desire for betterment," Ethan shot back, each word bold and unyielding. "I won't bury my convictions. If my ideas jeopardize my position, then perhaps this organization needs to re-evaluate its values." Mark hesitated, visibly wrestled by the confrontation. Ethan seized the moment, quickening words flowing with newfound authority. "I've gathered data, collaborated extensively, and constructed a thorough analysis. Suppressing my findings would only pause our inevitable decline. If my voice isn't welcome here, then I may need to seek opportunities elsewhere that value integrity over conformity." A flicker of alarm sparked in Mark's eyes, revealing a crack in the armor of indifference. For a fleeting moment, it felt as though the ground beneath Ethan's resolve had shifted, and perhaps even Mark sensed the tremor of inevitability. "Are you prepared to follow through with what you're suggesting?" Mark asked, a hint of uncertainty lacing his tone. Now the question lay bare on the table, the crossroads unfolding in the face of opposition. Ethan paused, reflecting on the gravity of his proposition. Stepping outside the box could lead to consequences, but standing amid the decay of silence felt far more liberating than the prospect of continuing to compromise. "I am," he replied fiercely. "And if we refuse to cultivate a space where ideas can flourish even when uncomfortable, we lose everything we stand for." What unfolded next felt as if the air had shifted. Mark's expression morphed, replacing resistance with contemplation. For the first time, the dynamics were altering, and a flutter of hope sparked within Ethan's chest. But with the spark came the realization of a daunting path ahead. This confrontation could ripple through his career and beyond. As he sat poised in that moment, pondering the first real shift in his professional existence, the prospect of navigating uncharted waters echoed through his mind. Where would this lead him? Without a map or guarantee of success, he was navigating the terrain of boldness and uncertainty, a formidable duo. As his breath steadied and the tension loomed thick, Ethan sensed that Mark's next words would dictate whether he was on the brink of a transformative journey or slipping back into the shadows of silence. Ethan held his breath, waiting for Mark to respond. What felt like hours passed in silence, each second amplifying his heartbeat until it thundered in his ears. He felt the weight of his position pressing down, not just the immediate professional stakes, but the larger significance of his stance against complacency. "Your passion is noted," Mark finally said, his tone less harsh but still laced with a dismissive edge. "But remember, change only takes root when it has the support of those at the top, which means persuading me. So far, all I see is defiance wrapped in bravado." Ethan's stomach turned as he heard the implications wrapped in Mark's words. This was not just about challenging a protocol anymore, it was about convincing a man resistant to change that transformation could benefit them. He felt the once edgy confidence settle into a more strategic realization. "Then let us discuss how we can work together to bridge these ideas with the existing frameworks," Ethan suggested, forcing himself to sound collaborative despite the sting of Mark's previous comments. If he hoped to be successful, he needed to pivot this confrontational encounter into something constructive. Ethan quickly formulated a plan in his head, recalling the supportive emails he had received from some team members who also believed in the discrepancies he had identified. He could gather those voices, build a coalition with the stakeholders who shared his perspective. Mark's expression hardened again, but curiosity glimmered in his eyes. "And you think a few informal endorsements will sway me? This isn't a popularity contest, Ethan." "No, it's about creating a real path forward," Ethan responded, the urgency to persuade pressing against him. "If I can show you the potential profitability these changes might bring, wouldn't that be more compelling?" Mark leaned forward, a small spark of interest igniting within the frigid atmosphere. "Profitability, you say?" He paused a moment before continuing, "Define it for me. What tangible outcomes do you envision?" Ethan seized the moment, adrenaline coursing through him. "I've analyzed our last quarter's data, and I can demonstrate how addressing the inefficiencies can lead to increased productivity and savings. That data represents not just numbers, but growth potential, an untapped reservoir of efficiency that could ultimately enhance our revenue." He was surprised at his own poise as he laid out the intricacies of his findings. The ideas flowed from him, correlations and projections painting a picture not just of success, but of a brighter organizational future. For the first time, he saw Mark lean back, not in irritation but rather in contemplation. Ethan's words struck chords that resonated in the corporate ethos, shifting Mark's perception from mere rigidity to the whisper of opportunity. "Very well," Mark said finally, his demeanor softened with curiosity. "You have 3 weeks to present a detailed proposal. If you can substantiate your claims with robust data, I'll present it to the board." Relief flooded Ethan's system, mixing with exhilaration as he felt the walls around him begin to shift. This was the moment he had yearned for, the chance to reclaim not just his career but also bring about the change he believed was needed. Over the next few days, Ethan transformed the initial rise of hope into action. He marshaled allies, brought together data, and crafted a compelling narrative of change. But even amidst the bustle and anticipation, a whisper of doubt trailed after him. Would Mark hold his word? Was this a ploy to keep him compliant, or genuine openness to new ideas? As the deadline approached, Ethan grew more consumed with the potential impact of his proposal, mixing excitement with trepidation. He was no longer just fighting for himself, he was igniting a spark of honesty that could reshape the cultural landscape of the organization. Would he be prepared for the interactions that lay ahead? Just as he finished his final slide, a message popped up on his screen: "Urgent, meeting with Mark. Immediate attendance required." Ethan's heart raced as he read the subject line. What could this mean? Had something changed since their last conversation? He bolted upright, ready to face whatever was on the horizon, the realization that everything could pivot in an instant pushing him toward the door. What awaited him in that meeting? Ethan stepped into the conference room, its stark fluorescent lights exacerbating the knot in his stomach. The air was thick with tension, palpable enough to taste, and his instincts shouted at him to prepare for the unexpected. Seated across the polished table, Mark's face was impassive, adding to Ethan's unease. "Sit down," Mark instructed, his tone leaving little room for argument. Ethan complied, taking a deep breath as he took his seat, mentally bracing himself for whatever was to come. "I hope you've been making progress," Mark said, fixedly staring at Ethan as if searching for cracks in his demeanor. "The board's agenda is tightening, and they're eager for insights." A flurry of thoughts crossed Ethan's mind. Preparation had consumed him, yet the exact path forward still felt nebulous. "Yes, I've been collaborating with several team members to gather a comprehensive overview," he replied, trying to assert confidence. "Good," Mark replied, but skepticism laced his words. "However, I have a different perspective on the changes you're proposing. Control and predictability are vital to any structure. You are advocating for disruption, and as your superior, I need to see stability, not volatility." Ethan's heart sank. Was Mark's earlier openness fading? A protective instinct kicked in. "With all due respect, Mark, isn't stagnation equally risky? This isn't about chaos, it's about evolution. Our competitors are innovating, and we risk being left behind. Mark's expression hardened, and for a moment, silence stretched like a taut rubber band ready to snap. Ethan felt the weight of that silence pressing against him again, clawing at his resolve. Passion doesn't substitute for sound judgment, Ethan, Mark replied, steely resolve returning to his voice. You need to show me that your ideas can definitively benefit the organization. Otherwise, they remain just fervent wishes. In that moment, Ethan realized his approach had been too focused on emotional appeal without sufficient emphasis on data-driven reasoning. This was his challenge. He needed to embrace a dual approach, marrying passion with precision. I understand. I'll ensure a detailed data set accompanies the proposal, he asserted, feeling the determination swell within him, igniting new strategies. There are key metrics that demonstrate not only potential growth but the capacity for competitive advantage. These aren't just dreams, we need to quantify them. Mark leaned back, a flicker of intrigue dancing in his eyes. Quantification is essential, but remember, data can be spun to support various narratives. Ethan swallowed hard, it was a challenge he hadn't anticipated. He considered for a moment, then steadied himself. If I can turn data into a compelling narrative that shows both risks of stagnation and the transformative potential of change, will that shift your viewpoint? Mark paused, the transition of power palpable as he assessed Ethan's proposition. Perhaps. See that you focus on aligning those narratives with the company's core objectives: risk management, productivity, profitability. Simplify the message. Don't get lost in theoretical benefits. Nodding, Ethan could feel the fog of uncertainty begin to dissipate, replaced with a clearer vision. His previous urgency morphed into a calculated approach, stripping down the complexities to create a compelling, accessible storyline. I will structure it to connect directly to our existing objectives, he stated, a warm current of newfound confidence washing over him. Good. Keep in mind, you're not just selling an idea, you're influencing leaders who are risk-averse by nature, Mark cautioned. You'll need to dig deep into your audience's psyche, understand their fears. Ethan nodded, internalizing that insight. The foundation he was building needed a deeper psychological understanding. To create a ripple effect, he was not just selling a new vision, he was selling the ability to embrace that vision. As they moved through the details of the proposal, Ethan felt an unyielding determination set the groundwork for growth not just in his project, but personally. Each interaction became a lesson, further illustrating the weight of influence and understanding in leadership. When the meeting concluded, Ethan left with a sense of purpose, renewed resolve tumbling through his thoughts. He was not merely surviving the pressure, he was thriving within it, evolving from an individual into an advocate for meaningful change. Just as he settled into his workspace, reeling from the breakthrough he felt, an email notification pinged on his screen. The subject line read, Board Discussion, Your Proposal. His stomach twisted with anticipation, curiosity burning bright. Would this opportunity catapult him into the role he desired, or would it place him directly in the line of fire? The stakes were rising, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for what lay ahead. Ethan sat at his desk, the email glowing on his screen, its mere existence a testament to his journey thus far. After weeks of building a proposal fueled by Maria's unwavering belief in him, he had breached the walls of complacency, confronting his fears head-on. This moment was fragile, yet potent, encapsulating the essence of his transformation. He had shifted from surviving the corporate undercurrents to actively influencing them. As he clicked on the email, his breath caught in anticipation. The board was convening to discuss his proposal that day. Would they recognize the labor behind the meticulous data he had gathered? Would they see the vision he would present, illustrating not just the need for change but the profound benefits that came with it? With a renewed sense of purpose, Ethan had spent the past few weeks enlisting allies, including those who shared his ideals and ambitions. Each conversation crafted with care, each alliance bringing him closer to his goal. He had meticulously detailed the financial projections, aligned them with company objectives, and crafted an argument that melded passion with pragmatism. This was no longer just his battle, it had blossomed into a collective vision of change, yet, deep inside, echoes of doubt lingered. Would the board heed his recommendations, or would they suffocate creativity in favor of conformity? His heart raced as he reflected on Maria. Her words had both guided him and solidified his resolve. She had been the fire igniting his courage, and now he felt that same fire burning within him, propelling him forward. The conference room where the board convened was starkly different from the impersonal settings where he often felt marginalized. There were dozens of chairs, all occupied by figures whose decisions had previously overshadowed his voice. But today, as Ethan entered, he felt a shift within him. He no longer considered himself an outsider. He belonged to this discussion, and his insights were vital. "Ethan," Mark greeted him as he entered, his tone softer than their last encounter, a shift acknowledging Ethan's newfound confidence. "Ready to present?" "Absolutely," Ethan replied, steadying his posture. He carried with him a potent combination of anticipation and certainty, recognizing the moment as significance. As he began to lay out his findings, the atmosphere shifted from suspicion to intrigue. He articulated his vision clearly, intertwining the analytical data with personal anecdote stories shared by colleagues, each one amplifying the stakes of his proposal. He spoke with conviction, feeling every word resonate within him and across the table. He wasn't just selling an idea, he was advocating for the potential transformation of the entire organization. Ethan watched as moments of recognition flickered across the faces of the board members. Questions arose, not in a defensive tone but instead probing for clarity and depth of understanding. This was not the battle for silence he had imagined, this was a dialogue. A collective consideration of a better, more transparent future. Finally, as he concluded, he sensed a palpable shift in the room. The board deliberated quietly among themselves. Seconds ticked by, each one stretched thin by anticipation. Would they endorse the vision he had put forth? Then, Mark broke the silence, drawing eyes toward him. "Ethan, your proposal has merit. We appreciate your diligence and passion for this matter. We'll move forward with these recommendations." A wave of relief washed over him, followed by a surge of joy and affirmation. The fear that had influenced much of his career gave way to a profound realization. This was the culmination of weeks of hard work, personal advocacy, and courage reclaimed in partnership with a friend who had sparked his journey. Outside the boardroom, he took a deep breath, steadying himself. This wasn't just a professional accomplishment, it was a personal renaissance. The internal conflicts of self-doubt and fear were vanishing, replaced with a newly found confidence, a realization that he was capable of genuinely making waves in his career without sacrificing his integrity or the principles he cherished. Meanwhile, Maria had been waiting in the cafe, her heart racing at the prospect of what Ethan would accomplish. When he finally arrived, their eyes met a mutual recognition of shared triumph. "Did it go well?" she asked, her breath hitching in anticipation. Ethan grinned, "Better than I ever dared to hope. They approved my proposal. We can effect real change." In that brief exchange, a transformation was visible, not just Ethan's, but also Maria's. They both realized how far they had come. "Let us keep fighting, for ourselves and for everyone else," Maria stated, a fierce determination lighting her eyes. For the first time, they were not only allies but partners standing shoulder to shoulder in a shared quest for integrity, change, and progress. Together, they forged ahead into a future ripe with possibilities no longer defined by uncertainty but rather by the strength they had unearthed within themselves. And in that moment, they both understood that their stories had just begun to blossom, intertwined through commitment to not only themselves but to the greater good they now dared to aspire to. Now is the moment to support this journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, because every click counts. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible ending. Your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to share this now, don't wait even one more second. Only true fans of overcoming personal stories understand the importance of supporting this channel with your actions.